Hey, what's up everyone? Ralph here. So in this video, we're going to talk about how credit card delinquencies are on the rise in America. If you've kept up with the reports, I think we're at over $1 trillion when it comes to credit card debt. So clearly a lot of people are racking up credit card debt, and if you couple that with the economy, the way things are, how inflation is, people are increasing that debt even faster because obviously the things that they're buying are more expensive, so they're just racking up that credit card debt even quicker. And as someone who's had $30,000 of credit card debt twice in his life, I know exactly the mentality of racking up this debt. Right? You buy things, you purchase things, and as long as you get a job, you make the payments on it. But then it gets to a point where you're racking up so much debt, you're like, all right, you know what? Let me move this money around. Let me get this 0% interest rate credit card. I'm gonna transfer the money over here. And you think in your mind it makes sense to you, right? You're like, all right, man, let me move this money around. I know what I'm doing. As long as I got a job, I can make the payments on these credit cards. And then it gets to a point where you're like, all right, damn, and all of a sudden you're in $30,000 of credit card debt, and you're like, yo, what the hell happened? Like, how did it get here? Like, how did it get to this point? And it gets to a point where you just eventually tap out, and that's what I did twice, right? It's just, and sometimes you have to, you continue to put yourself in these positions until you learn the lesson. Eventually, I was able to learn the lesson, and I became much better with my money. But for a lot of people, they are having this same struggle, especially in today's economy where inflation, where the cost of living is as high as it is. So I came across this report from the New York Feds, and it talks about delinquency is increasing on the cards for maxed out borrowers, and the way this report goes is they focus specifically on younger, like Gen Z, consumers, credit card holders, because they find out that they're the ones more likely right now to max out their credit cards. And based on this report, they're going to break down why that's the case. Okay, and they talk about credit utilization, and for those that don't know what the credit utilization is basically the amount of money that you use compared to your limit. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit, that's the most that you use on a credit card. And let's say if you use like 2,000 of that, your utilization is at 20%. Okay, so we're gonna go through this report, and I'm gonna just go through I'm not gonna read the whole thing. I'm just gonna read like highlighted parts. So it says, all right, so and they go through this report, and what they found was that 52% of borrowers were using less than 20% of their available credit in the first quarter, right? Which is good, right? You want to make sure when it comes to utilization rate, which has a 30% impact on your credit score, you want to make sure you're using that credit utilization is very low as possible. And they say 52% of borrowers are less than 20%. Right. However, while 18% of borrowers were using at least 90% of their available credit, so 18% of credit card borrowers were in that 90% of their available credit. So they're basically close to maxed out. That's not where you want. You don't want to be in the 90%. You want to be as low as possible. I usually try to keep mine less than 5%. But like they said, if you're less than 20%, that's good. But you want to keep it even lower than that, right? You want to make sure that the higher your utilization rate is, the more impact it's going to have on your credit score. All right, so it says 18% of borrowers are using at least 90% of their available credit, which is not where you want to be. Okay, that's coming from experience. So it says, all right, so for all debt outside of student loans, delinquency has been steadily rising since the fourth quarter of 2021 after historic lows during the COVID-19 pandemic. Credit card delinquencies in particular have risen past pre-pandemic level. So what they're saying is like so it says everything has been increasing, like all types of debt. Student loans delinquency has been increasing, and they're increasing past pre-pandemic levels. So they were at a point pre-pandemic levels where they were rising. Then once COVID happened, it dipped down, but now they're starting to creep back up. All right. So and it says, while borrowers who were current on all their cards in the first quarter of 2024 had a median utilization rate of 13% in the previous quarter, those who became newly delinquent had a median rate of 90%. So more and more people are starting to become delinquent with their credit cards. Okay, and if you look down here, all right, and look in this chart. Let me make this smaller. So basically, like you have an understanding of what this chart is. So it says this lower blue line right here, right? So that's people with a utilization rate of 0 to 20%, right? You can see from 2015 to now, it's pretty flat, right? Like if you're someone with a low utilization rate, it's gonna be steady. You're not worried about being delinquent or maxing out your credit card. And then you move up to 20 to 60%. The red line it's still pretty much steady. And then when you go for 60 to 90%, you can see that from 2015, it's pretty steady. And then it dips down from COVID, and then it's starting to creep back up. Okay. But now, if you look at the people from the utilization rate from 90 to 100%, you see it goes up and then comes back down, and it's creeping back up. So people within that rate are starting to get maxed out, right? They're increasing their max out rate. So you see more people becoming delinquent, especially the people that are within the 90 to 100% delinquency rate. Okay. So as we continue to go down, all right. So let me increase this. All right, so it says, it should be noted that credit card utilization is a function of both balance and credit limit. And people with lower limits generally have a higher utilization rate. Indeed, current borrowers in the 90 to 100% utilization band had a median total credit limit of $5,000 in the first quarter, less than half of the median of median $10,000 limit with the 60 to 9% group, and less than 1/4 of the 0 to 20% utilization group median's limit of $21,000. So to some degree, utilization rate is also a reflection of underlying credit quality and income, because higher credit score borrowers with higher income typically have higher limits than lower utilization rate. So let me break that down. Obviously, if you're someone that has a high credit limit, right? If someone you have high income, more than likely the bank is going to give you a high credit limit. So people that have a higher credit limit are less likely to max out their credit cards. Not to say that doesn't happen, but they're less likely to do that compared to someone who has a low credit limit. They're more than likely. Like, so if you have a credit limit of like 100,000, more than likely you're not going to max that credit card. But if you're someone that has like a $5,000 credit limit, then more than likely you're going to max that out. Right. And based on this report, they do it based on income, and they also do it based on, like, say, generation, right? Like Generation Z, millennials and stuff like that. And they're going to give a quick breakdown. And I'll go over that chart. So if you look at it, so boom, here they go right there. So they're going to start with the income, right? We'll start with the income. So basically from lowest income to higher income. And you see if you're someone in the lower income, you have a median credit card balance of $1,400. You have a median credit limit of $11,300, but your percentage max out is 12.3%. So obviously if you're someone of lower income, you're going to have a lower credit limit, and you have a more higher rate of maxing out your credit card compared to someone that's a high income. And you see the median balance is $2,000 almost $2,100. Then you see the median credit limit is about $25,000. Their percentage max out rate is 5.5%. So obviously the more money you make, the less likely you are going to max out. And then if you break it down by Gen Z, and of course Gen Z, like if you're someone that's Gen Z, you're probably not making that much money, so you're probably someone that has a low credit balance anyway. So based on that, you're going to see, Gen Z is more likely to max out their credit cards. And if you look at it, it says Gen Z, they have a median balance of $760, and then their median credit limit is $4,500, and their percentage max out is 15.3%, compared to baby boomers who have a higher credit limit, and they have a less likely chance of maxing out their credit card. So based on income and based on generation, the more money you make, the higher the credit limit, the less likely you are to max out your credit card. But they're finding it, obviously the younger generation, people and low income people are maxing out their credit cards. All right, so if we continue, it says, all right, so the chart below, so another chart. So the chart below shows us a time series of non-delinquent maxed out borrowers, with the blue line denoting their share among current borrowers and the red line showing their share they hold to aggregate current balances. Credit card borrowers made massive paydowns on their credit cards in 2020 and 2021, a time during which income rose from pandemic transfers and assistance, but consumption opportunities were limited, resulting in a decline in the share of maxed out borrowers. Since the economy reopened in 2022 and consumption was very strong in 2022 and 2023, credit card balances increased again, resulting in a rise of share of maxed out borrowers and their balances. These shares remain slightly lower in the pre-pandemic level, but are edging back up. So let me shrink this a little bit. So you can see that. So it says the blue line is the share of borrowers who are maxed out, and the red line is the share of balance held by maxed out borrowers. So you can see, like, during 2014, everything is steady, and then obviously come the pandemic, everything drops because people aren't spending money as much as they used to. But once everything reopens back up, you can see that thing shoot right back up. So it shows you get an idea of, like, basically on people's spending habits. So people are getting, once the economy opened back up and people were able to spend the amount of money, they got right back to their spending ways, especially when it came to the credit card. So in conclusion, we have shown that new credit card delinquencies are disproportionately ascribed. Let me increase this up a little bit. Boom. All right, disproportionately ascribable to maxed out borrowers and their balances. The share of maxed out borrowers has been increasing from pandemic lows and is approaching pre-pandemic levels. And the delinquency transition rates of these maxed out borrowers are now noticeably higher than the pre-pandemic, resulting in higher transition rates into credit card delinquencies overall. For a positive improvement in credit card delinquency, we would need to see the delinquency transition rate among maxed out borrowers begin to decline and or share of maxed out borrowers to fall. So far, the data show neither of these trends moving in the right direction, and these trends continue, and other factors include influence delinquencies remain the same. Credit card delinquency are likely to continue to rise. Of course, macroeconomic conditions can move these trends in either direction. So basically what they're saying is they see that people are continuing to use their credit cards. And of course, as the economy, as inflation continues to be an issue in this economy and things become more expensive, people are finding ways to max out their, obviously get to that point where they're maxing out their credit cards. Things are more expensive, right? So, and if you think about it, people are able to handle it, right? Of course, inflation, you have inflation and people are spending their credit cards and maxing it out, but they're able to make their payments because obviously as long as you have a job, you can make those payments. However, what's also a fact that you got to think about is because inflation is increasing at a rate so much and things are more expensive, people's expenses are increasing at a certain rate, but their income isn't increasing at that same rate. So there's an imbalance, right? So you find that people, what they're finding is that they can't keep up with what they're spending. So people are spending more on their credit cards, and because of their wages, they're not making much money. It's getting to a point where more money is coming out than that's coming in. Of course, if you do the math, you know what's going to happen. It gets to a point where you're like, all right, you can't sustain this, and then you're going to eventually tap out. Your credit card's going to be maxed out, and it gets to a point where you can't sustain that type of lifestyle. So, but you can see it a lot. I think this focus is more on Gen Z, those who have like obviously lower credit limit, and obviously that's something that we got to watch out for because the economy's getting tougher. Things are more expensive. People are struggling. People are trying to figure out ways to obviously maintain their finances. And if you're someone that has credit card, has debt, whether it's student loans, whether it's credit card, whether it's called auto loans, whatever type of debt you have to figure out ways to reduce that debt. Because if your money is going to a lender, it's going to be hard for you to find ways to build wealth. It's going to be hard for you to make sure that you're not living that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, right? You got to make sure more money's coming in than going out, and that's why it's important to do the budget. Right? And most people don't do that. They just, whatever's in the bank account, they're spending it. And then you find out, and then they wonder why they're living paycheck to paycheck. And with economy the way it is, where things are more expensive, you have to be more conscious of your spending. All right? So those are my thoughts. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Make sure to leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and share. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe. All right? So guys, take care and have a good one. Later.